check. Check. You all set, Peter? Good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Renshaw, Town Manager. I want to welcome everyone to the Future Police Headquarters Community Forum. Thank you all so much for coming out this evening. We're thrilled to have you. I want to take a moment to provide an overview of how we arrived here and the truly vast amount of work that has gone into the project so far. To let you all know, the process began way back in October of last year when the Select Board established the Police Facility Advisory Committee. The next critically important step was to appoint members of that advisory committee, which the Select Board did back on December 16th of last year. I want to introduce each of the committee members. Start with Boyd DeMello, the chair. Boyd is in the audience someplace. Carissa April, the vice chair. Mr. George Sherrill, Mr. Robert Zolo, and Mr. Michael Duffany. Each of these folks were selected first, their expertise and their professional backgrounds, but honestly, in my opinion, having worked with them for the past several months, I've been nothing but impressed with their passion, their love for Falmouth and the community, and wanting to make sure that we get this right. So, the committee got hard to work, and with the assistance of the owner's project manager, Vertex, made a recommendation to me in February of this year concerning the selection of the next very important piece of the project team, our architect and engineering firm, Tecton Architects. And ladies and gentlemen, since February, the team has literally been working in overdrive to get us to where we are tonight. Peter, hit the next slide. Thank you, Peter. So what I'm going to do is just take a minute to go over, kind of give you the major components of tonight's presentation. We're going to go over a review of the existing police station conditions. A lot of you, it's been well documented in the papers over the past couple of years where that's at, but we're going to show you visually through some photographs because a picture says 1,000 words. We're going to spend some time with you describing the methodology that went into defining the space needs of the facility. A large amount of work went into selecting the location, and that's one of the major reasons we're here tonight, selecting a site location. The conceptual design would be next. Next steps, the Assistant Town Manager, Peter Johnson-Staub, is going to lead us through kind of next steps, a chronology or timeline, if you will, of the next steps for the project. And then Police Chief Jeff Laurie is going to give closing remarks. And lastly, and most importantly, we want to leave the bulk of the time tonight for you folks to give us comments, ask your questions, and hopefully we can provide some answers. So, thank you, Peter. Like I said earlier, the ultimate goal tonight, at this stage of the process, I should say, is site selection. There's been a vast, tremendous amount of work, research, investigation going into the site selection. You're going to hear about that process. And then the Select Board is going to ultimately approve that site selection. Your comments tonight are going to be an important part of that process. And lastly, the other reason we're here tonight is to talk a little bit about the design budget. Ultimately, town meeting in November is going to approve the design budget. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chairman DeMello, who's going to talk about kind of the existing police facility conditions and where we're at and where we're hopefully going to get out of. Thank you, Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Renshaw. Once again, Boyd DeMello, I'm chair of the Police Station Advisory Committee. I'm going to spend just a couple moments going over the existing police station and why we are where we are today. So for those of you who aren't familiar, this is the police station located on the 750 Main Street downtown. This is an overview of what we refer to as the municipal.
Community services.
Pardon me?
Community services.
That one. Thank you, Peter. And also, Peter, if you go back one slide for me. There we go. Thank you. So, on this campus here, with this campus, besides the police station, which is highlighted in blue, we have to the front of the police station the Edward Marks building, which is Human Services is currently utilizing the first floor. Next door to the police station is the Senior Center, and then the Community Recreation Center, and then Fuller Field to the rear of the property. Currently, the police station takes up about 2.75 acres of a 13.5 acre site on this downtown campus. So going forward, one of the things we did, oh, there we go. One of the things we determined, and sorry, Peter. One of the things we determined was that the existing facility was too small, and they needed a bigger site, and this is part of the process we're doing with the conceptual design. However, the existing building right now is just over 22,000, almost 23,000 square feet, and currently we're sitting on a design phase of about 43,744 square feet and another 4,500 square foot outbuilding, which is going to encompass about 4.5 acres of land. Also, parking is pretty tight on the existing site downtown now for what their current needs. This graphic here overshows what is equal to a 4.5 acre site overlaid on the existing site, which will clearly show you that we can't fit a new police station in the downtown location. Continuing with how we got here today, back in April of 2024, the town solicited the services of Gale Associates to do an evaluation of the existing building. The existing police station was built in 1969. Its last major renovation was in 1984 when they extended the two sides of the police station back to the north of the facility as it exists today. The building envelope, there's costly deficiencies that need upgrades and code upgrades to the building. It's very undersized for the current and any future growth of the department, and has a slight ant infestation in the building that is dealt with on a regular basis. Conditions found in the Gale report: there's water intrusion, there's active leaks, moisture infiltration through the basement slab, damaging finishes and rusting radiators. The Sally Port, in the wintertime when there's sand buildup and stuff, the water down there actually comes up in some of the other areas of the basement. The exterior envelope has some failures in it. There's cracked masonry, failing mortar joints, spalling on the concrete and stucco, and window trim and deterioration. There's rotting and failing windows, wood trim, and some open joints and deteriorated sealants. All this is laid out in the Gale Associates study, which will be available on the website for the Police Station Advisory Committee. Mr. Staub, John Staub, it's there now. That report is on the website, and it's pretty in-depth, and I would encourage you to take a good look at it. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tecton Architects to define the need of where we are today and what we're looking to do.
Thank you, Boyd. Defining the need is a three-step process, as we'll outline it tonight. It starts with the internal staffing assessment that the police department conducted. It goes on with a space needs assessment that Tecton worked with the police department in developing. And then ultimately it comes back to a process of refining the data and the results of those exercises that the Police Facility Advisory Committee played a great big role in helping us get through and get to where we are in terms of what we're looking at as a need right now. So it's a three-step process, a lot of data-driven parts of that process, and we'll tell you a little bit about it right here. So the internal staffing assessment that the police department conducted, it was basically, we're looking at the future growth of the police department and how many future staff we're going to need. And they used a lot of nationally available tools. We're working with the IACP, which is the International Association of Chiefs of Police. There's also really good information available from the Bureau of Justice Statistics that helps departments understand what their future looks like. And so there's a couple different ways you look at the data. The first one is understanding the population. As population changes, and that includes not only your full-time population, but also your seasonal population, as so often happens in this area. And so you look at the officer per thousand ratio, and you look at that compared to other communities like yours, and then you get a sense of where you should be trending and how you compare with other communities. The next piece is workload based. That's the actual calls for service. As calls for service increase, and I can tell you after 38 years of doing police facility design, calls for service often outpace the population numbers, and so departments become more creative in how they respond to calls for service. But there are metrics that go along with the calls for service and establishing what your need for officer count is. And of course, the last one is thinking about your crime-based data. Whether that's uniform crime data or just understanding where crime happens in your community, so that you can target the resources where they're going to do the most good. That also is a really good tool for helping you support your community policing initiatives as well. And so finally, we look at all those national benchmarks, and by the way, the average in the United States is 2 point officers per 1,000, although New England coastal communities are about 1.39. It's true across Massachusetts that the officer per 1,000 ratio is less than the national average. There's a lot of different reasons that go into that. But at the end of the study, the results were that the department is recommending that from the current staffing levels of 67 this year, that by fiscal year 29, you'd be looking at 109. Now, the staffing study doesn't in there because we've got to think about what is the full life cycle of the building. We're not building a building for just fiscal year 29. We've got to think out at least 50 years to make sure that you have the return on the investment that you make as a community. So with thank you, Peter. You can see on the left-hand side of the slide the data that supports the results of that study. Current staffing on the light blue on the left, with a 78 total down at the bottom. The proposed staffing in fiscal year 29, where you get to 109 total. And of course, the future staffing pushing out 50 years, where you look at about 129. One of the important things to understand about this is a lot of those people, those officers, don't use an enormous amount of space in the police station. So when you look at the 129, that's locker space, it's a seat at the roll call room, it's a little bit of participation in training space. Not everybody doesn't get an office in a police department. It doesn't work that way. So from there, we went and did our space needs assessment, and that's where representatives of Vertex and Tecton sat down with the whole police department. We had their training room with a lot of people in there, and we talked about the way they operate. We talked about the kinds of rooms that they would require to conduct business, and we talked about the sizes of those rooms, and we ultimately came up with a document that establishes what the total space needs are. And after the first pass, you can see in that gray box, we were looking at a main building of about 58,846 square feet. That's pretty big. With an outbuilding of 3,600 square feet for a total of just over 62,000, almost 62 and a half. So that one, then we go into the refining process, and that's where we brought the results of that needs assessment to the full advisory committee and went through that data and talked about it in detail. We looked for opportunities of creating savings. We looked at programs that maybe we don't need to build today. And we looked at ways of capitalizing on our investment. One of those you'll see in the outbuilding square footage actually increased, even though the total square footage decreased as we went through this exercise. And the reason is you can build the outbuilding at a lesser price point. So we moved from some things from inside the police station to outside. So at this point, we're looking at about 48,244 square feet. We've already saved about 23% of the area from the initial program. That exercise continues on as we go through the design process. So part of that process of refining, of course, we started with aligning the project with the staffing study. We took a close look at those numbers and how they would affect the future growth and the future space needs. So a lot of effort in that. But then also we took a look at refining the space needs, and we focused on mission critical spaces, the things you really need to provide good law enforcement for this community. We decreased private office sizes. We did consider off-site space of putting some functions in different locations, and then we really focused on the efficient layout of the building, making sure that we get more functional space and less corridor space. Corridor space, it costs you money, but it doesn't serve any operational function, so we like to reduce that as much as possible. And then one big move that we did make is eliminating the live fire shooting range. We do reserve space on the site for that, so it could be addressed as an indoor shooting range in the future, but it's not included in the project at this point. So that's the exercise of defining the need, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kirby.
Thank you, Jeff. My name is Stephen Kirby. I'm with the Vertex Companies. We're the OPM on the project. The selection of a location for the police headquarters was a lengthy process. Starting out with a townwide assessment that the town planner worked on, that started actually in 2023. He assembled data on a number of town-owned properties. Actually, there's 576 town-owned properties within Falmouth, and he used data to review each property and evaluate its viability for a police station. And as you can see, we started from 576 parcels down to 404 to 132 to 33 to 22. And we finally got to actually, Peter, I think you got to go back. Yep. We finally got to 16 parcels, and the criteria that the town planner was basing his initial evaluation on before it was transferred to us was parcel size being 5 acres or greater, road access and location, not being in a flood zone, and not having conservation restrictions. And on the right-hand side is just a couple of snapshots of the data that the town planner collected and handed to us as a committee. So when we took the 16 properties, and that was what was given to us, and we worked through a site selection matrix to narrow that down to 4 properties. The evaluation criteria that we used is shown. There was 18 listed criteria, including topography, abutter impact, zoning restrictions, deed restrictions, topography, special permitting, storm drainage. We really looked at all of those properties and narrowed those down to 4 of the top properties, being what's called parcel 8 and 9, which was up on Nathan Ellis Highway, which is Route 151. Then parcel 16 was on Blacksmith Shop Road, adjacent to the wastewater treatment plant. Parcel 15 on Brick Hill Road, and parcel 14 on Brick Hill Road, which are next to each other. And just that layout it was showing on the map of Falmouth, and then in the lower section, we're showing where the existing police station is. So going through the individual parcels, parcel 8/9 was a 30.9 acre parcel. That is the topography of the topo plan of that parcel. And what we did is we did a test fit of a building on that parcel, making sure that, number one, it would fit, but then looking at the pros and cons of that parcel as to the operation of the police department. This particular property has multiple utility easements. It's difficult to access because of Route 151. There are topographic issues, and as you can see, it's a very narrow lot. The pros on that, there was no flood concerns, and it did have adequate utilities. Next parcel 14, that topo is just showing a small section of that because it's a 101 acre parcel on Brick Hill Road. And again, we did a test fit with the building and site layout. Just to orient yourself, this is across from the Lutheran Church. It did have some cons, was the Water Resource Protection Overlay District, but the pros were good topography, good site access, adequate utilities, no flood concerns, and no geotechnical concerns, and I can elaborate a little bit more on the geotechnical shortly. Parcel 15, again, parcel 15 is adjacent to parcel 14. That is 167 acres. And once again, we did a test fit with a building layout. You can see how the building layouts have changed a little bit, and that was trying to fit it within the confines of some of the parcel restrictions. This was a little bit more challenging. There was large boulders that were visible on the surface. It did have a challenging topography. It had poor roadway visibility because it was on a curve. It is also part of the Water Resource Protection Overlay District. Did have cons with, it had somewhat good site access, adequate utilities, and no flood concerns. And then the final of our top four was parcel 16, which is a 314.5-acre site on Blacksmith Shop Road. But that is also where the wastewater treatment plant, and I believe there's an animal shelter on that property. So again, we did the test fit, and as much as that's a large piece of property, the wastewater treatment plant restricts the available land that could be used. And as you come down the access road, there's definitely some topography issues, a lot of differences in elevations. And then the road access to this site is difficult because it's that service road. The pros on that was utilities and the fact that it was not in a flood zone. So using our site selection matrix, we ended up narrowing the sites down to two. And those two were parcel 14 and parcel 15. And what we did is we went ahead and did some physical geotechnical investigations. We did test pitting on both of those properties to see what the soils were like. Parcel 14 had really good soils. Parcel 15, as we expected, when we did the test pitting, we found cobbles and boulders underground also. Ultimately, we ended up preferring parcel 14. It's got the lowest potential site development cost because of its soils, good access and visibility, there's no jurisdictional concerns, adequate multiple municipal utilities. Again, the topography is good. The geotech engineers determined that the bearing soils can bear foundations. There is also adequate size for future growth. The project will meet all the requirements of the Water Protection Overlay District because we will be connecting to the sewer that is going to be installed, should be in place by the time, provided this project gets approved, we need it for construction. And I'll hand it back over to Jeff. Thank you.
Back again. So we'll talk a little bit about the conceptual design. We're going to keep it high level because that's an early part of the work on the design, and really we're about site selection tonight, but see if I can do this right. All right, so this is the overall site. You can see the red dashed line, that's the extent of the site. That bright green area way up there at the top, that's the developed area that we're looking at for the police station. So compared to the overall site, it is a very small portion. You can see by the yellow lines there, it's about 1,500 feet to the intersection at Gifford Street, 450 feet to Andy's Lane, and we've got about 1,000-foot buffer to Long Pond. You can see where the Lutheran Church is, the title just across the street from the police station site, and of course you can see Brick Hill Road running right along between those two. So taking a quick look at the conceptual site plan, one of the things that we think about is how do users access the building and how do they interface it? That's the people from the public, you folk. When you come to the police station, we want to make sure that you have clear identifiable parking and know exactly where to go to get the services you need. So you can see that big blue area on the front, arrow on the front is telling you right where that public entry is going to be. The public parking is right there. And all of the departments that you typically need to interface with will be right there off of that public lobby. There is a staff entry to the backside. That's where all the officers come in and out and the investigators come in and out on a daily basis. You can see there's a sizable parking lot up front so that we can have events using the community training space in the facility, and then all of our staff parking wraps around. You can see the outbuilding sitting there at the very lower left corner of the site. We are looking at doing covered parking for the cruisers at this point. That's something we're continuing to discuss. And I just want to point out on the lower right-hand corner there, you can see a little drive that loops around. That's our access into the Sally Port. The Sally Port is where you bring detainees into the facility, and you always bring them into a garage, close the doors, and get them inside, so it's a really safe transfer. So that's a look at the site plan. And I'm going to give you the high level on the floor plan. If you want to look in more detail, the plans are available in front and in back. But we just put big boxes because you couldn't read it on the slide anyway. You can see the arrow that orients to that public entry up at the top of the page. That leads you right into our lobby and where our community training room and our main access point to the police department, our main desk is located. Just to the left of that dark orange area is our records. So main desk, records, community room. There's also public interview room. All the things that most people coming into the police station need are right there. If you go down to the left on the secure corridor, you get into some of our locker and fitness areas. You do pass by the community engagement in that deep dark blue. And then all the way at the end there in that green, the bright green, is our administrative area. That's where the chief and all his folk operate out of. If we head down the plan from that community space, the hallway heading down, you'll see evidence on the right-hand side, K-9 and SRT garages on the left-hand side, and then ultimately our prisoner processing and detention area is down in that orange at the lower right-hand corner.
What is this at?
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to say that. Thank you for asking. The Special Response Team. Upstairs, you'll note that the upstairs is smaller. So even though the building has a large ground floor, it's a smaller upstairs. That white outline area is the single-story space. But upstairs, we have our investigative bureau. We have some of our patrol functions, roll call, patrol administration, report writing space, also our training in the purple color there. And then over on the left-hand side, right next to dispatch, is our IT area. So really, a lot of those functions sit right upstairs. That way we can minimize our footprint and maximize the efficiency of our envelope. And that is our conceptual design. With that, I see Peter jumping up and making his way down the aisle. I'm saying stuff to stall for you here. How's that? Pretty good.
Thank you, Jeff. So next steps. Where we are tonight is we are in the site selection and concept design phase. We are seeking your input tonight from the community. We can also have folks who may be watching from home can email the select board at selectboard@falmouthma.gov with any questions or ideas that you may have with respect to site selection. And site selection, of course, connects with concept level designs, as you just heard. The site that we need is driven by the size of the building that we need and the parking area and the acreage that we need. So that's the phase that we are in now. We will be bringing a request for funds to the November town meeting in a couple of months, and we have a design request of $5,150,000 that we will be seeking at that time. And if we are successful, that design development process that takes us through bid documents will take about a year. So in a year's time, we anticipate that we will be ready to seek construction funds at the November town meeting. And we have, again, we're very early in the design process, so we do not have firm construction cost numbers, but our conceptual ballpark number is in the range of $65 million. And so that would be, we would be prepared to bring that to a November 2026 town meeting. And in the coming months, we will be, again, subject to town meeting approval of the design funds this November. We'll be talking to the select board about whether they want to consider a special town meeting or a special election in November or December of 2026. Normally, we would have a debt exemption vote to authorize borrowing for a project like this at the annual election, town election in May. However, because this is such a large project, if we delay the start of construction by 6 months, that's going to cost, just for inflationary pressures, in an additional $1 million is our estimate of what that cost of delaying by 6 months. So we're going to be talking about potentially a ballot vote in November, December 2026, or if not, May of 2027. And with that, I will hand off to Chief Laurie.
So, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. I'm going to go back when I started. I went before the select board and they affirmed me as your chief. And the first thing I did, I was excited. I wanted to meet the officers and I wanted to tour the facility. And basically, the next morning, Deputy Chief Lowen came into work and he said, "Hey, what did the chief think of the new station?" And he goes, "Well, he's appalled." So in his office to this day is the word appalled, 3 times. I guess I used the word 3 times, I didn't realize it. And Chairman Boyd DeMello, he told you about the issues in regards to this, the status of the building. But what I'll say, it's way too small. It's an inadequate space for 21st century policing. It's outlived its usefulness. We just can't keep the water out. And that's a problem. So what did we do? We cleaned it. We did some minor enhancements. I'm happy to report that we purchased some furniture, some different things that we're going to bring with us to keep some of this cost down. All the enhancements that I think it was like 1.4 million that was left, we gave a lot of that back to fund this design project because we don't want to put good money into bad. This location, I'll tell you, it's the most central location, and I know there's some people out there that say, "Hey, we like the police downtown." There's no spot for us downtown, and it's so congested, and with all the housing and everything you're developing down there, it's very difficult for us, not just in the summer, but in the winter. So we feel this location, because we realize we're out on the road most of the time, but when we have to deploy, it's more centrally located, and it's better for you folks. It's better for the residents, so if you do have to come to the station, it's really in a very, desirable area. And like I said, we're building this. It's a 21st century building. It's going to be, community oriented. I think you're going to be very proud of what we'll accomplish if you support it. And it's needed. I mean, we need to get out of, where we're at. And with that, I'll close with that. And we look forward to answering any of your questions. But we just can't stay there. We got to go. Thank you.
So, thank you, Chief. With that, folks, we'd love to hear again the purpose of tonight's meeting. That was a great presentation, great information to get out to the community. But really, the reason we're here is to get your input, your feedback. I wanted to mention we have a couple of Select Board members. Chairman Miscali is here, and Select Board member Doug Brown. Have I missed anyone? No. So this is where the rubber hits the road, folks. So if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer those. If you have any comments, we'd love to take those down tonight. And like Peter said, if you have any additional comments or thoughts, suggestions after tonight, send those to selectboard@falmouthma.gov. So what I'd ask, to kind of keep it a little bit orderly, is if you do have any questions, so that the folks listening from home can hear, we'd ask that you come to the podium to your left. Who's going to be first?
Hi, Doug Brown for the Select Board. I'm curious about the foundation. It looks like it's a slab on grade by the plan. I don't see a basement plan. Are you considering the full foundation for storage or future use? Maybe you could put a few windows in the back. Was that considered?
So currently, we're not planning on doing a basement under the building. That's a lot of square footage. And, I know in New England that there's, this sort of axiom that says, once you put in foundations, you're partway to a basement. But to actually get usable space for a police department down there, it's significant investment in all of that square footage if you put it under the entire facility. Yeah, it's a lot of storage, but it's also a lot of money to get that storage. So we're trying to accommodate our storage within the building, and particularly using that outbuilding and using that slab-on-grade methodology, because it is a good cost point for the project overall. And I will say, you know, when we were looking at the various sites, of course, we saw some with fairly dramatic topography. It was making us scratch about whether we do walkout basements or walkout lower levels and things like that. But, you know, when considering all of the earth movement that we would have to do to accommodate the program in there, compared to what we're seeing on the selected site, there's way less earth movement. It's really just a leveling it out and creating a flat spot. So I think in the long run, it's going to be a less expensive excavation earthwork project.
And I guess if you were to select to use the full foundation, you'd probably have to put an elevator in too then, right?
Yeah, well, we have to do an elevator anyway because it is 2 floors.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah. But yes, you'd have to
And Doug,
extend the elevator to the basement.
you bring up a really good point with storage. The offices that you see here, we toured, I don't even know how many facilities we toured all over the Commonwealth. And that was the #1 complaint of everyone we talked to, not enough storage. So with this project, we kept that in mind, and we're going to be in good shape.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't want to do this. Hi, Peggy Nickerson. I am a Precinct 3 town meeting member, so I feel I need to be here. But I will preface this by saying a couple of things. In 1985, I was the first round of police dispatchers, civilian dispatchers, to work at the station. So I know the station. I was also on the Senior Center Building Committee and the new fire station building committee. And this is actually what I do for a living, is municipal construction. So I think this is great. I think you'll need some backup to get the dollars, because that the town meeting will want. But my question, what I didn't hear tonight, is on solar. I didn't hear anything about your intention for solar. And on the LEED, the green initiative, what your intention is to do with anything with that. So that's really what I wanted to.
I can tell you from my standpoint, the police department will have its first all-electric car probably next week. That's going to be my cruiser. There will be charging stations there. Also, where we're going to park our cruisers, if we do that, that will be solar. That is on the plan. It's one of those areas that we would rather not cut, but if we have to, it would be the parking, canopy parking, but that would have solar on it.
So if I may, you are a stretch community, which means that we have to think a lot about the energy efficiency of the building. Particularly, my favorite, whenever I talk about sustainability, is building a great envelope. The envelopes building envelope, I'm talking about walls and roofs and things like that, making sure they're well insulated and tight. The kinds of walls and roofs that we do today are vastly different than the ones I did when I started my career, and the performance of the buildings is dramatically better. The building code, the stretch energy requirements do require us to make this building completely solar ready. So we have to have provisions with space for switchgear, pathways, conduits to get to the roof, the capability of the roof to support the solar. As the chief mentioned, we're also looking at, if we do that covered parking, that's another option for getting solar on there. Most communities these days are prepping for solar when they build, but a lot of the solar stuff comes later on. Sometimes it's through a purchase lease agreement with somebody like Amoresco or one of those companies that does that kind of work. I've only done one police facility where we actually purchased the solar panels at the same time that we did the project, because usually with the turnover and the life cycle of those, it's more beneficial to consider other options. But yes, it's on the town's horizon, or the future vision, to do solar when the payback's really good and they get the right deal for the town. So that is a factor in this design. Thank you.
Do you want us to identify ourselves? Peter Hargraves. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate the opportunity to make input before a vote is taken at Select Board, and that doesn't always happen. I have two things. One, I'd just like to ask, based on what I've heard about the old station, is that a tear down? Now, clearly, for everything else aside, with the size of the department and the needs of policing in the 21st century, you need new facilities. But put that aside, what I've heard is that that building is basically a tear down when we leave that site. Could I just put a pin in that for a minute? Because you've obviously studied it and you understand a lot about the building, and it sounds like a horrible place to be for anybody, not just for the police.
I don't think it's fixable, if that's what you're asking. We can't keep the water out. So, that's for, the building department. He couldn't make it tonight. But if you go on and read that study from that company, I think that's what it says. We can't keep the water out. I mean, you're going to have a whole new shell. You're going to have to, like you said, I think, tear it down, rebuild.
And Peter, what Chief just said, and I'd add, and Peter, Jonathan Stout can correct me, so as some of you know, we're looking at doing a site planning study of that campus, that whole area, and that will look at potential future uses and needs of that space. But I tend to agree with the Chief as we sit here tonight, based upon the condition of the building. But that study, the future planning and space use study, would inform our decision, I think.
So, and just to be transparent, the reason I'm asking that question is the Finance Committee just approved money for a study of that area as a recreational campus. And it sounds to me like there shouldn't be any consideration of refurbishing or remodeling that building in terms of that strategic use of the area as a recreational campus. I wanted to put a pin in that, and this isn't the last word, but I want to get it out here while we're talking with so much knowledge about the current building. Because I know once you start dealing with a building as described by Mr. DeMello, I think really it's a tear down, and thanks for confirming that. The other thing, I love the site. I love what you're doing. I have one question, but first a comment and a caution. Based on observing what happened with the senior center, Jill Bishop did an extensive survey and planned the needs of seniors and the layout of the building. And in order to save a couple of $1 million, we cut off a couple of thousand square feet, and people are kicking themselves with a too small senior center. That's a short story. I'm sure there are many sides to that discussion. But I was really glad to see that you're thinking about this in a modular fashion to build a firing range later instead of, but it looked like you were still cutting down on the size of the facilities. And I'd say, be careful about that. Just look at the senior center, see if there's any learning there, see if we should do the stretch now instead of regretting it later. And so that's tied into my question, really. I saw the projected needs for policing into the middle of the 21st century, and looking at that 1.34 per 1,000 population, how does the size of the police department roll up to those numbers? What assumptions did they make about the population in the town? It's been stable to declining, and there's no prospect for improvement or increase.
Well,
So
I'm going to have Captain DeCosta tackle this one in a second, but what I'll say is this. If we think there are 34,000 people living here, there's more than that. COVID happened and people didn't leave. I mean, just the traffic in the winter now. Look at the traffic we still have. I mean, you folks, I've only been here a little over 2 years. You folks that have been here a lot longer than me know this is not the Cape of the 60s and 50s and 70s. We swell to over 100,000 in the summer. We do not have our summer officers anymore, so we're strapped really thin. And I'm not trying to frighten anyone, we're busy. We're a busy department dealing with real crime issues. And I don't know, Captain DaCosta, who I give him 5 stars for doing this study, has anything else based on our data, but you got 1,100 permits being pulled right now, and people are going to move into these places. Just look at downtown, the amount of growth that they're building downtown alone, which is another reason why we need to get out of downtown. So I would say to you, yeah, maybe the school population is declining a little bit, but our residential growth is here, and that's not ending anytime soon. And we based a lot of the data that you're going to read. Please read the staffing study. A lot of hard work went into that by this man right here. It's about a bunch of things to include crime and everything else. If you look at our summer population, we should have 230 police officers. We know that's never going to happen. We know that's not going to happen. But I think what I'm proposing now that to 86, I think I can adequately provide services. We can adequately provide services. You'll see in that presentation a traffic unit. Well, we don't have a traffic unit. You know, I'm building this for the future because we have a traffic problem, and we need officers designated just for that one lone assignment. There are so many specialties, civilian positions that we want to create, so we don't have to hire 106 police officers. That's why you see, when you read the study, you'll see 17 added civilian staff. But with that said, if you have any...
Yes, sir. Doug DaCosta with the Falmouth Police Department. So the staffing study, several more pages than what we have, so I stay with the chief's recommendation to read the whole thing, but currently we have 67 police officers and 7 civilians. So what we did is we looked all through New England with very similar communities and tried to determine what they were using for staffing. So we found for the year-round population that we're 28% short of the average. That's 19 officers. For the summer population, it's a little bit scary, but if you use the national average, we would need 240 officers. Obviously, that's too much. It's fiscally irresponsible. But with the numbers that we've used for the rest of the New England area, similar communities, that would be 110 officers. So that's just population-based, which can fluctuate depending on what type of community they are and what type of crime they're facing. So we looked at the crime rate. So the crime rate per officer shows that the Falmouth Police Department has 56 or 38 officers fewer than necessary to handle comparable criminal investigations through these similar communities. And that puts us at about 105 police officers. And the civilian staff is underrepresented by 229% with the same communities. And we also looked at exploring increasing our sectors so that more cars are on the road, more officers are on the road, and we're able to reduce response time and solve your issues as we're, on our patrol. So with a gradual addition of 19 officers and 11 more staff members, we'd like to reach 86 police officers and 17 civilian staff. And I've detailed it in the study, so please check that out. But those are our goals, and that's how we got there.
Excellent, excellent work, Captain.
Peter, in your reference to the space of the building, and if you note back to the slide that Tecton presented, we had a 23% decrease in the size of the building after the first, high-level flyover in the project. We actually did, as a committee, at the request of the town manager, look at additional space reduction on this project, and we just really couldn't identify it to a point where we weren't providing the community with a building that's good for another X amount of years going forward. And we're not talking about additions to a building or anything else. If we cut more out of it, we're really hamstringing the department. So I mean, we're cognizant of the fact of space needs, and I am too familiar with the senior center project, and I understand the problem there. But we have looked at it, and we're looking at both sides of that to see.
And just to be clear, I wasn't suggesting that we cut the space further or reduce the number of officers to make a smaller building to have it cost less. I was saying we should dream big, a big, hairy, audacious future. I'm sure we can't even imagine the policing we're going to get when this facility is in place. And so I think, though, when you're talking to people, the summer surge is the simple way to talk about those staffing numbers and the needs that we have that fluctuate throughout the seasons. And so, because people are going to wonder when you present information that allows them to do arithmetic and say, well, does Falmouth need more officers per 1,000 people than the average? But our situation isn't typical with a seasonal surge. So thank you for your addressing the questions, and good luck with this. I love what you're doing. I love the project. I'm a supporter, just to be clear.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Anyone?
Good evening. My name is Kate Jewett, a Precinct 5 Town Meeting member, and I do appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I think it's really great. I'm getting used to the idea of having a police station on Brick Elm Road, but it makes sense. My question is, what are you going to do to protect our water source? I know that there is some space between this parcel and the Long Pond, but I'm still quite concerned. There's all kinds of things that get dumped on the soil and get dumped in the water, and so we really need to make sure that we use the EPA to work with everybody in putting this together so that we do not have a problem in the future with our drinking water any more than we do. Thanks so much for all the work that you've done. Great job.
So while they come up, the experts come up, the one good thing I'll say with us being in that location with our ATVs and our UTV is we'll be able to patrol that waterway, better protect it from a law enforcement standpoint, because we'll be there. And I'll let the experts explain what we're doing to ensure we don't hurt that area environmentally.
So 38 years ago, when I started being an architect, we didn't do nearly half the stuff we do today to protect not only our land area and our energy efficiency, our sustainability, but really importantly is the quality of drinking water and waterways and water sources associated around projects. And there are a lot of great regulations that are in place now that go into the design work that our civil engineers will do to manage and protect the waterways. A big advantage here is that we have the ability to tie into that sewer line that will be in place before we get there. But the other big story is making sure that we contain not only our stormwater runoff and treat it properly before it infiltrates back into the soil, but any of those other areas, making sure that we have the proper garage spaces with the tight tanks so that none of that material gets released into the soil but is contained and then eliminated and disposed of in a proper manner. So, a little bit of the square footage that we talk about is actually going into making sure that we have the facilities to do safe design work to protect the water sources. And the community, as I understand it, has already gone through this process with the wastewater treatment plant. So the community and the potable water. I'm sorry, my apologies. A potable water treatment plant. So they're well familiar with the requirements, and my civil engineers have done an awful lot of this work on a lot of very sustainable projects as well. And the DEP and the regulations that are in place really guide us to best practices to protect all the water resources that are out there associated with all our projects.
Hi, Robert Dugan, Precinct 2. Are there any needs that you have that are not included in this layout of this building? Is there anything that you wish was in this plan? Or does this meet all the needs that you have?
I believe it'll meet the needs. I think one of the things we took into account was if they do have to expand, you'll see there's an envelope in that current structure to go up another level. Would I like to have an indoor firing range because we don't have an outdoor firing range? I absolutely would love one. But right now, it's just a matter of cost. But as far as where we are now with the plan, I think it would meet our needs. I think it's a 21st century, policing building that I know the staff is. I'll be honest, it's going to be a recruitment and retention tool. It really is going to show. We're a professional department. You've got amazing officers, and they deserve this. And I'm on the back nine. But these kids and these young ladies and young men, they deserve a state-of-the-art facility. I think this meets it. But yeah, I mean, I love 58,000 square feet, but I don't think the town is going to have an appetite for such a large cost. So what we did was, we sat down as an internal group, and we said, what do we need to have an adequate building that's going to last for years and years to come? And we did. We did some cuts. And the team did their own. And then we met, and they almost mirrored each other. We've been working side by side with these folks, and the entire department has been involved in this. I did it as a team building exercise. So we got input from the most junior officer to the chief of police, the internal committee, which is Detective Tom McGuire, Deputy Chief Lowen, and Captain DaCosta. We've been working tirelessly on this. And to answer your question, yes, I think this will meet the needs. Of course, you always want more, but at the end of the day, I think this is really going to be one heck of a building, state-of-the-art facility we're all going to be proud of, that is going to meet the needs of Falmouth for many, many, many years.
I think the site selection is excellent. I think that the access points are great. I did have one question. I don't know if it can be answered tonight. You mentioned that it has to be on the town sewer. I assume that's to get around the overlay district. What do we have there now? Are there additional costs from the treatment plant? And are there any issues with capacity with the discharge permit?
Peter?
Peter? Sorry about that, Peter.
There's too many Peters here tonight. Peter McConaughey, Director of Public Works. What I can say is we're working with our wastewater superintendent on this connection. There's different options. We're not looking to put in a IA system or go any kind of septic system in ground. We're looking to bring that up to the plant. So we're currently working with the wastewater superintendent, and we will be looking to, if there's political decisions that need to be made or policy decisions that need to be made, we'll work through that. But that's what we're working for. Right now, there's two different options.
Vicki Angstrom, longtime resident. I've always had a concern about the town forest and the fact that we have passive recreation there. Lots of people in and out and around Goodwill Park and the town forest. The kids from the high school, the cross-country teams, travel around on the trails when it's cross-country track team time. I think you should seriously consider the fact that the time of hunting in the town forest is over. Please consider that, especially when you think about the fact of we had a young man skulking around a school. We don't want people in the woods with guns behind the police station.
For the record, we don't want people with guns behind the police station either.
Good evening. My name is Paul Dreyer, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2. Chief Laurie, I'd like to provide some observations. This project is a long time coming, and very happy to see it move forward. I appreciate the effort to pick a site and the criteria being used. I also like the idea that you're scaling down some of the facilities to make them more affordable. I think that's a really important issue. but I just have a couple observations, if I may. I'm pleased you're moving out of the floodplain to a central location. Secondly, there was some controversy some time ago about the call center being in the police station. I see the dispatch area upstairs, but there's no mention of the call center. Can you confirm that's where the call center will be for?
Yes, sir.
For the police station? Thirdly, I would suggest you delete the issue about the future firing range. With all the issues we've had with the base and so forth, if they come up with a viable way of having a base, I would think the police department would be able to work with them rather than have their own firing range 1,000 feet from the main water source. Finally, this is a very good team, very good designers. Why does it take a year to design this station? I would hope you'd be able to move that up and move this much quicker because you got a good team. They know what they're doing, and we should be able to move this forward because it's a long time coming.
You know, we'll definitely try. In your comments about the indoor range would be environmentally friendly. It catches the lead. There would be no contamination in the ground. It would be an indoor facility. So it's just, like I said, we realize we're probably never going to have an outdoor range, and it was just our way of being able to train lifetime. If it happens, great someday, but right now it's been cut.
And can I make a comment on that point? And it is a need, I feel. It was cut out of the current project, but there's a cost, so everyone understands, and I think everybody does. There is a cost when you don't have your own facility for firearms training. The officers have to go elsewhere, and I'm not quite sure what those opportunities are today, but sometimes they get limited, and the opportunities to train elsewhere get reduced, and we have to travel further and further, taking officers off the road, bringing them in on overtime. So there's a cost to not having this facility, to be fair.
And Deputy, how much a day do we rent the range for? $300 a day. So, and how many days is usually training? Usually 9 to 10 days a year. So it's $3,000. That comes out of the budget.
If I could address the question on the schedule for design. Right now we're just at conceptual, very, very early on. We still have to do schematic design development, construction documents. The size of this project is going to require contractor pre-qualification and bidding. And we also have to fit this into the town meeting schedule. So we're certainly, if we can move things up, we will, but we want to make sure that we allow enough time that we feel is necessary to do this design properly.
I have a question, Chief. If we were to have a full basement, would that be an adequate space for firing range or training?
I mean, we could. I mean, isn't that, I think some stations have done that. What we were going to propose is basically, it's almost like, how would I describe it? It's like, you would propose it. I like the way the structure itself.
So, first off, I'll answer directly the question. Yes, if we did have full basement, we'd have more than enough room for the range. Probably, once again, spending lots of money for more storage space than we really need. I will say I'm not a huge fan of ranges in the basement because indoor ranges, in my career, they've changed a lot. We've had a lot of air quality modifications. The filtration system that you use to make sure that the officers inside of ranges are safe have gotten bigger and more complicated. I've seen a lot of ranges that started out in basements that are now storage rooms because they aren't able to upgrade them because of where they're located.
Okay.
So it's something to think about. It's not that you can't overcome it, but it is a significant thing to think about. One of the options that we have been exploring from a cost perspective is there's a number of companies that make what's essentially called, it's a modular range system. So they pre-engineer components so that you can piece together ranges of different widths and different lengths. It's much more cost effective than stick-built construction, or in this case, masonry construction. And it already comes with all of the protection of the wall system. So that is a cost-saving option that's out there when it comes time to think about should Falmouth have its own range. So that was one of the things that we thought about in our site planning is making sure that we had the space to accommodate that in the future.
Okay.
And was the cost 2 million?
Again, it depends on the range. You were going with a longer range for rifle, which yeah, it's going to easily be 2 million, probably 2 to 3 million, I would say.
So that's why we didn't do it.
Right. It would be $2 million more to do the full foundation? Is that what I just heard?
No, it would be to do the modular range.
That would be the modular.
Oh, okay.
Would be 2 to 3 million.
Will you be able to give us an idea of the alternate cost of the full foundation if we want to consider it?
I can do that, yes.
Great, thank you.
Great questions, by the way.
Anyone else?
So again, if you think of any questions after tonight's meeting, we'd love to receive those. selectboard@falmouthma.gov is the email address. The assistant town manager and I, as well as all 5 of the select board members, receive that. So again, if you think of anything after tonight, selectboard@falmouthma.gov. We'd love to have additional comments. And with that, unless anybody else, anything else to say, Peter? Yeah. We want to thank you all so much for coming out tonight, spending time with us, and giving us your thoughts and comments. Thank you all, and be safe going home.